Hi guys, happy Friday. I want to tell you about a story, and this is could be a controversial story the way I'm going to tell it. Pretty sure there's people that won't agree with me the way that I'm telling it, but argue with me, I don't care. So this is a story of Joseph. Before we get to Joseph, I want to tell you about Joseph's father, Jacob. Jacob fell in love with a woman named Rachel, but he couldn't have Rachel. He first went to work for his father, and his father said, if you work for me 7 years, I'll give you Rachel. But he tricked him, and after the 7 years, he switched the brides and gave him her sister Leah instead. So when he found out, he was very upset, and his father-in-law said, okay, I'll make another deal with you. Work 7 more years, and then I'll give you Rachel, because the older one has to be married first before the younger one. So he agreed, and then after 7 more years, he got Rachel. So he has two wives. Now, Leah, she had sons before Rachel. Rachel had a hard time getting pregnant, but she finally did, and that's when we get into Joseph. So she had a son named Joseph. Now, Joseph was her firstborn son. So naturally, because Jacob loved Rachel over Leah and he wanted Rachel, he did not want Leah. This showed favoritism. He did more for Joseph and than his other brothers. So his other brothers started feeling envy and jealousy. He didn't have the same responsibilities as the other brothers. He was taught to read and write. He didn't have to go out and tend to the animals, and he didn't have to do all the work that his other brothers had to do. His father made him a coat. His father seen something great in him, that this is the chosen one, and that's how he treated him. So naturally, of course, I feel like the brothers had every right to be jealous. Who wouldn't be jealous? I mean, can you imagine being in this, this is your mother treating you some type of way because you're a stepchild or a child of a wife that they really didn't love? So this is what happened. And now Joseph starts to dream. He has big dreams. He tells his brothers and his father, I seen your bales of hay bow down to my bales of hay. And I seen the stars and the moon bow down to me, or however he said it. So even this was too much for the father. Even the father was like, hey, you might need to tone it down. Like, what are you saying? Like, we're going to bow down to you? And the brothers, like, what are you trying to say? Like, his older brother, Jacob, was like, I'm the oldest. Are you suggesting that I'm going to bow down to you? Like, this was threatening. So what did they do? They did like any other person would do. Let's get rid of him. Just kill him. And so one day, he came to meet his brothers, and his brother threw him in a pit, and then they sold him off to slavery. Problem solved. Welcome back to Bree.
Wish I was a type of girl you could bring home to mama. The type of girl my daddy could be proud of. Didn't wanna second guess it, asking questions. I don't wanna chance it, taking chances on my riding through the city in my Jeep with the doors off. Still gotta be ready when they try to move my doors off. I'm a big girl that ain't looking for no drama. I'm a big girl, you can say that for your mama. Just give me the keys to the Jeep so I can vroom vroom. They can't even get to unless I'm in the wrong room. Cause I'm here for a reason. Ooh, yeah.
Okay, so now I have another story, and this is called Plato's allegory. Now, this story, it was three men in a cave, and this is all that they knew. They'd never seen anything outside of this, and they're chained, and they're staring at a wall. And on this wall is like puppet shadows and voices, and the voices are coming from the puppets being cast onto the wall. And this is their reality. They haven't seen anything else. Well, one of the men get freed, and he looks around, and he says, wait a minute, those people are casting the shadows on the wall, and the voices are coming from them. That's what's really happening. So now he sees the truth, that the puppets on the wall and the voices it's not real. And then he leaves the cave and he goes and he sees the sun, and the sun is bright and painful because he's never seen the sun before. And there's birds and animals and all kind of things that he's never seen, and he's excited about it. And he realizes that, hey, I was in slavery, I was in bondage. I've got to go back and free my friends. And when he goes back and to tell his friends, hey, this is fake, that's not real, what you're seeing, there's a whole world out there, they're like, you're crazy, get away from me, like, go away. And the next person that tries to tell us that our reality is fake, we'll kill them. Now, how does this story relate to the story of Joseph? Well, let's get into our own story. So many of us are on a journey, as we call it, where we have goals and we're trying to get somewhere in life. Now, are we Joseph, or are we the brothers in our story? Or are we the man that escapes the cave? Or are we the people still in bondage that want the stories on the wall to still be our reality? And how do we know? How do we know which character we are in our own story? So, if you're on a path and you're like, I want something out of life. I want a nice house. I want to have money. I want to prosper. Like, these things are not bad. Like, who wants to suffer? And who has to? Because God says, I wish that you would prosper. So he wants us to prosper. And then we get blessings and we're told that we're going to have this, especially if you go to church. You want to have that. Your God's going to give you a new car, and God's going to bless you with a family. And I see your husband on the way, or I see your wife on the way. And just hold on and keep pushing and keep coming to church, keep praying. You know, we hear all these things and we're patient, we're waiting and waiting on God, right? So this was me. And I would say that the day that I became Joseph in my own story, and the day that I became the person that escaped the cave, is what I call the first day I ever went to church. Now that sounds crazy because I grew up in church. I've been in church since birth, my whole life. But the first day that I say I really went to church was the day that I started asking questions. Now, the first time that I was like, you know what? I want something out of life and I don't know how to get it. Before, I just lived the system. I did what I was told. I learned from the people around me. God's going to bless you with a car. Great. I'm waiting. And life is living me. I am not living life. I am not making decisions. I am just living and allowing whatever to happen to me happen. And I'm believing everybody around me. I'm truly in the system. I am following the rules. Now, I got tired because I'm like, you know what? These rules have consequences. And these consequences, they're hurting me, right? This relationship is not fun. And I keep telling myself that this relationship is not what it seems. Now I'm lying to myself because I'm telling myself that things are good when they're really not good. And it was only so much I could take. So I will say the first time that I ever went to church is when I said, God, I want change. I want a relationship that feels good. I want someone who truly loves me, not that I have to pretend or make excuses for. I want kids with my husband. I want a nice house. And, you know, I started dreaming. I started dreaming like Joseph. And I will not say that it's easy, because when you start to dream, you're dreaming with what you have. And at the time, what I had was a bad relationship. relationship that I would say is not what God wanted for me. But that's okay because you don't know until you start dreaming and until you start moving. And I started asking questions. One thing I do remember is that family and friends around me, they also dreamed. They said, I'm going to buy all of you a house and we're going to have money and this is going to happen for us. And I seen all of this with what was called faith. Maybe it was. I don't know. And then I would watch these people die and never get any of it. And not to say that they didn't live a fulfilling life, but I was like, that is not what I want. I don't want to die with my dreams. I want my dreams to come true. And how? Do only the wicked prosper? Does the good people suffer for your name's sake? Is this how it goes? I didn't know. So I wanted to find out. And so when I talk about you're on a path, this is where your path begins because you start walking. And the way you start walking is you start asking questions. You start checking, hey, what is my results, right? What am I producing? What is my fruit? What is happening? And I'm in a bad relationship. Okay, I want to change it. God, what do I need to do? So I know there's cause and effect. There's something you have to do. So you naturally ask the people around you, and it was pray. Come to the 40 days. Come every day. Don't skip a day. Let's fast. Let's go without food. Let's pray and God is going to do all these things. Well, it still wasn't working. I'm still suffering. And so back to the story of Joseph. The problem that I would say with Joseph and the problem that I would say the guy that escaped the cave is he told people the dream. And so when David told his family his dreams, his own father was even like, that's enough. And they, not his father, but his brothers, put him in a pit and sold him into slavery. So he was removed from his environment. His environment could not hold his dream. It was too big. And in Plato's allegory, he had to leave because they'd said that they would kill the next person who told them their reality. So sometimes our mistake is telling people our dream, and we think, yeah, I get that. You don't want to tell someone your dream that is what we would call it hater. But family and friends, they love you. That should be okay, right? Well, it didn't turn out okay for Joseph. So your family, they love you. They truly do. And I'm not going to argue that. Your family loves you and they support you and they want to see you thrive. But they think that they do. We think that we do. We could be victims. Like I said, you don't know who you are in this story. You don't know if you're Jacob. You don't know if you're the brothers. I believe that we all are the brothers and we all are the people in bondage in the beginning of the story. And it is up to us to see if we become like Jacob or like the guy who escaped. And that's when you start asking questions. But asking questions comes with a price. You might end up in a pit, or you might be threatened to be killed. So when you tell your family your dreams, what you want to do, Our family is who raised us, especially parents. And parents can mean well. We mean well if we are parents ourselves. And what do when we have children? We tell our child the rules to life, the rules that kept us alive, because your brain wants to do the least amount of work and the safest. We want to be safe. We want whatever takes the least amount of energy, and we want to survive. And hey, we turned out okay. That's what we hear. So the number one thing that parents love to say, you didn't listen. You don't listen. We tried to tell you. You were hard-headed. Ain't no good. Don't do no good to tell them. They don't listen. But I'd argue that we actually do listen. And we do exactly what we were taught to do. Because we have to be an example. And not only do we listen, but we also do what we see them do. And we repeat the patterns of what our parents did. And so when you go to the story of Jacob, his father, or Jacob, he is the father, he stole the blessing from his older brother, Esau. Now, the Bible says that God hated Esau and he loved Jacob. But what does that mean? Because Jacob was the deceitful one. Now, people could argue that Jacob actually, he seen the value in the blessing and Esau just threw it away. But let's look into that. Deceitfulness, I would argue, is a sin. And Jacob was deceitful by tricking his father out of the blessing, out of the birthright. Now, what did the father do? He didn't just squander the blessing. He couldn't help that he was blind. And are we saying that God loves deceitfulness? That would be a contradiction. And he not only was deceitful with his father, but Esau as well. He tricked him. He waited until he was so hungry and didn't have any food. And we know what that feels like. We can't even turn down a donut when we're on a diet. Can you imagine what it's like to be starving and not have food? Do we understand how powerful the brain is when it's hungry? Do you think we really don't want to be snatched and, have our summer bodies, summer coming up? That's not it. We want the summer body, but it's hard. And that's just denying basic, stupid snacks. We have plenty of food. We're not out here starving. But we want to sit here and we want to look down on Esau because he was starving. So Jacob stole the birthright. And then once he did that, I would argue, is deceitful with his father-in-law, tricking these animals, causing them, to be born spotted or unspotted, whatever his father-in-law said he could have, and then, hey, his decisions caught up to him one day. He wrestled with God. God changed his name to Israel. The whole thing, he just suffered his whole life because of his decisions that he made, rightfully so. And so now he's faced with a day where his decisions are catching up with him. Esau is in front of him. His father-in-law is behind him. Jacob's ran off with his daughters and his cattle and all of these things. And I'm not quoting the scriptures word for word. Please go look it up yourself. This is not a Bible study. This is trying to see behavior patterns here. So could have been in front of him. I don't know. But anyways, now he knows, hey, one of these people are going to kill me. So let me split up my cattle and all of this because somebody's going to die here. So if they find you on this side, they're going to kill this half of the cattle. And if my father-in-law finds us, they're going to kill that. So I know I'm about to die. So he runs into his brother Esau. And Esau did something interesting. For Esau to be the villain in the story, Esau kisses his neck. He had gifts and everything Jacob offered to Esau. Esau didn't want it. Esau showed maturity, forgiveness. Hey, I don't care that you stole my birthright. I'm doing well. Yes, did he make a mistake? Did he go and marry someone that he shouldn't have married? Did he go outside of the covenant? Yes. But who doesn't make mistakes? We all make mistakes. Did he pay for it? I'm sure. But at the end of his story, he apologized. He forgave his brother for taking the birthright. You took everything from me. But Esau realized I didn't need that. See, my identity wasn't in that. My identity is in me. I choose my path. Yes, that would have been nice, but I'm good. Look at what I've created. I didn't need that blessing. You don't need that prophecy. So what if the prophecy failed? So what if you were told not to go do this and you did it anyways and then you experienced the outcome? It's not the end of the world for you because your identity isn't in your behavior. It isn't in your results. It isn't if you made mistakes. That is not what defines you. So to me, the hero in the story is actually Esau, the one that we are told to hate. Because God said he hated Esau. But what did that mean? What did it mean to love Jacob? And what did it mean to hate Esau? It's because love means I'm going in the Greek or the Hebrew. And this is something you look for yourself. But love was, I'm going to establish my covenant with you. So we could go all the way back to Job. When God promised Job, or the whole conversation with Job, because Job said, I don't have anybody, there is no one to defend me. That's what I see the story of Job is like, almost like he didn't have a lawyer to represent him to the judge. He was alone. And it sounded like God was saying, you don't even know, I already have someone on the way. And so the whole time was God loved Jacob because that is where he was coming. He was coming through the bloodline. He needed to keep that bloodline. That was the covenant, his promise. Now, once Jesus was born, he said, there's no more Jew nor Gentile or Jew nor Greek. He don't care no more. He fulfilled the promise. That was the promise. So now we could sit here and say God hated Esau, but now Esau has a right to be saved, just like Jacob, just like the Jews. And this isn't about the Jews at all, but it's just to show you that that Esau wasn't hated the way that we think he was. To me, Esau actually was the hero, because when you look at Jacob, to his deathbed, Jacob never acknowledged, from what I've seen in scripture, anything that he did. Now, did he, reconciliation doesn't equal forgiveness. He never reconciled with Esau. He just was scared. Hey, here's some gifts, man. Don't kill me. Hey, I was wrong for taking the birthright. You know, I'm ready to change my behavior. He didn't do that. He still went on to be manipulative because he showed this when he continued, he affirmed his behavior when he chose to put his hand on Ephraim over Manasseh, Joseph's sons. He crossed his hands and blessed the younger brother. And Jacob gave him an opportunity before he died to acknowledge what he did wrong. At least that is from what I see. And I'm pretty sure people will argue with me, and you could be right. I don't care. Prove me wrong. That's fine. Make a podcast and tell me how I was wrong. Prove it by scripture. I will listen to you. I have no problem with being wrong. So this is just from what I studied. And so he had a chance to make things right, to acknowledge his wrongdoing. But no, he said, we're going to continue the pattern for the younger brother. We're going to continue the behavior. We're going to continue the traditions. So what happened with Joseph? Now, we know that Joseph's brothers obviously never learned their lesson either, because on Jacob's dying bed, he cursed all of them. And not that he put curses on them, but he told them, he called out their behavior. He didn't take any accountability that your behavior is because of my mistake. You know, Jacob defiled his bed, or whoever, one of his sons defiled his bed and like slept with his wife. I don't know. And, if you just go to the story, it's like all the sons except the ones from Rachel was like, this is going to be your life. You're going to end up in slavery. You're going to end up living in the seashore or whatever. I'm like, oh my God, but no accountability at all. He died exactly staying the same. And that's what happens. That's what happens to us. That's what happens to our family. We continue these patterns. We continue these behaviors. We teach our kids these behaviors that doesn't get us the results. Look at Jacob's life. Now, we can say, hey, God loved Jacob. Jacob was God's favorite. But if you look at the life of Esau and you look at the life of Jacob, I'm going to go with Esau's life. His life was prosperous. He seemed like he would make good decisions. Yes. Did he make a mistake? Did he go marry outside of his covenant? Yes. But he showed maturity at the end. Hey, I forgive you for taking my birthright away. Jacob did not. Jacob had to wrestle with God. Jacob's sons did all of this. He almost died in famine. He thought his son Jacob died. Then his son Simeon was taken into prison because they were going to take Benjamin. And then they went back with not enough food and said, hey, they want us to bring Benjamin. And the father is just distraught. Then his wife dies. And hey, it's a lot. I don't know who wants Jacob's life, but it ain't me. And it wasn't because God wanted him to suffer for his name's sake. It's because of the decisions that Jacob was making. Do you think just because he was chosen to fulfill the covenant, do you really think that God wanted him to make the decision? So now we get to Joseph in the story. Now, Joseph didn't do anything wrong. He had dreams. He made a mistake, but it wasn't like a sin. He told his brothers and his father his dream. And then he was sold into slavery because what happened? His dreams were too big. They didn't have the capacity to understand his dreams. Just like many of us, we want something different than what our family has told us that we're capable of, because they haven't seen it. So saying, hey, I want to become a doctor or a lawyer or a basketball player or any of these things, or I'm gonna be the first millionaire in my family. Like it's just like, I love that. I love that for you. And they're supportive, but until you start doing things and you're doing things against the system, and that's when we get into, hey, you didn't listen because now you're taking chances. So with me, when I'm in this relationship and this relationship isn't working, and I'm going to church and I'm praying and I'm fasting, and hey, my situation isn't getting any better, and you just got to hold on, and angels are going to come down and defend you. And, my relationship is getting worse. Finances are getting worse. I'm doing what you're telling me to do. My life doesn't look good. I've listened to you since I was 17, and I'm hurting. It's getting worse. And just, keep holding on. And they use all these scriptures to justify you just not moving. Stay still. Don't move off the path. You're like, you know what? I don't know what to do, but I'm about to start walking. Now it's, did she just take a step? Did she just do something we didn't tell her to do? Did she just move to California? Take her kids? That's not what God wanted it. No, it's not what you wanted me to do. You don't know what's right for me. I don't know what's right for me. But I can't just stand here and wait. And Paul talks about this, just standing still, like walk. God will stop you. He will close doors and he will open new doors. And you just have to walk, and you have to try things, and you have to trust. That's what walking with faith is. You can't just wish to be a doctor, but don't ever go to school. How are you going to get your degree? Oh, God puts me in places I'm not qualified to do. Yeah, how? I've never seen this happen before. You have to question your environment. Who have I seen do this? What are they doing? How did they get to this place? You keep seeing, repeated patterns. If you kind of go back, you might notice, hey, the situation that I'm in, my family was in this situation, and the family before that, and the family before that. Like, I want it to stop with me. I don't want to continue this. I don't want to, it's a curse. I don't want my kids to go through this. So what do I need to do? And you just start moving. And then the thing with Joseph is when he told his brother his dream, that's where we mess up, because we're seeking validation from people who don't understand, because they didn't walk, and they're not wrong. Your family isn't wrong. That is something very hard that I'm having to struggle with, is because this path is lonely, and I'm going somewhere that people in my family never been. I got brothers who are going places that I'm not going to. And it is family that went places that I haven't been. We don't understand their path. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean your family is bad. When we call ourselves the black sheep of the family, everybody calls themselves the black sheep of the family. And just because people around you don't understand your path, because they can't support you, doesn't mean that they're wrong. And sometimes you can be on this path and you find yourself like Joseph, and like the person in the cave theory, you want to take the people that you love with you, and they will fight and kick and scream because they don't want to go. And you love these people, and they're your family, and you want to take them with you. And they will tell you, your dream is too big for me. I'm scared. Because what does that say about me? If I find out that your way works, what does that say about the last 30 years of my life? That's an identity threat. And they didn't ask to go down this path with you. And so when you try to force people to go down the path with you, and you are seeking validation from people, and they're fighting you, and do you feel like they're against you? They don't have the cognitive, emotional, or generational capacity to validate your internal world, your ambitions, or your narrative. So what they're saying is, please stop asking me to. They are, that's what I said, they are setting a boundary with you. And you have to respect that. You have to respect, if you really want this, that path is lonely. And what does that say? That would be them admitting that if you're doing well, then they'd have to admit that they failed you before. And their nervous system won't allow them to do that because they don't have the psychological bandwidth to hold that you're talking about. They would have to hold generational regret, moral responsibility, your ambition, your pain. And that can be, that, like I said, that could be too much for their nervous system to handle. And so they shut the door. They put up that boundary. And that's not saying that we're wrong, because that pain, that's growth. And growth is lonely. This path is lonely. And but it doesn't mean that you're unseen. You just you're just finally standing somewhere they can't reach anymore. And something else I dealt with was that I was in a bad relationship at one point in time. And you know, I I had to do work. Not only did I have to have faith when I'm walking down this path that leads to a good marriage, but I had to do work in form of relationship classes, relationship courses, relationship books. It was a 7 year journey. It was hard. It was laying in your bed crying alone some nights, and you know, learning how to recognize when someone wasn't a bad person, they just wasn't my person. And I remember, making this list of everything that I wanted a man. And if I was to say God spoke to me, I would say God said, when I wrote this list and said, God, and this list was long. This list was like 44 things. And it was like God told me, now become that. And I was like, what? Hey, I'm finna take some stuff off because I can't do all of that. But it was like God wanted me to work on myself, because how can he put somebody broken with someone that he made whole already? That's not fair. And so in doing all this work, and 7 years of work to end up in a good marriage, for people to tell me God blessed you with a great marriage. And it's not to take anything away from God, because God doesn't need us to validate his ego or whatever. He doesn't, but it's the fact that people couldn't see me. They couldn't see that they took the work that I did out. And that's fine. But that means they're expecting results. They have faith without doing the work. And so that used to be so aggravating when people would say, oh, God brought him into your life and he blessed you. And it's like, well, no, I mean, yes, he did. But hey, I had to do a lot of work. I had to walk with God. This wasn't overnight. I didn't wake up and he didn't fall from the sky. And I just got tired of this. Like, blessings just fall from the sky. No, blessings take work. And, you know, this took discernment. This took personal growth, learning from failure, changing patterns. And that's what I wanted validated, because that is what I wanted them to see. That was me dragging them down this path that they didn't want to come down, because Obedience, the obedience that they teach you, that didn't guarantee safety. Authority, that wasn't wisdom. And early suffering wasn't necessary. I'll suffer for my namesake. Like, I got I wanted them to see me. I wanted them to see the work that I did to earn. I had to earn my blessing. God didn't just give it to me without being deserving of it. And you see people and they're like, "Oh, I want this and God's going to bless me with this." And I get, like I said in the previous video, I get to make bad decisions and who cares? You know? And but I realized that just like Joseph, I know that Joseph's brothers, didn't really learn because you have like it's Genesis 50:15 and you'll have to go read it for yourself. But after Joseph's father died, they felt like Joseph was going to make them pay for what they did. And so they sent a letter saying that our father said for you to forgive us. They were scared. And Joseph cried. And Joseph, he didn't need their validation anymore. And he wasn't dreaming anymore. He was the dream. He was second to Pharaoh. He was protecting and providing. Didn't matter anymore. And you'll get to a place when you reach your goal, it won't matter to you. But not to say like you won't have to put up boundaries, for these people, because you're not going to change them, because that's too destabilizing for their belief system, because you are what we call meta cognition, is you're able to see your results and pay attention to what pattern is causing this result, self-examination, abstract reasoning, holding paradox, having uncomfortable conversations without collapsing. When you can do that with someone, you're like, I'm talking to a real person. I'm talking to somebody walking with me on this path, and they're not. At least, they are not willing to be. And that is a one-way intimacy. And when God says, I want to be intimate with you, these are the things that he's asking for. And, so when God is intimate with us, he can see us. We can see them. They can't see us. And it's almost like looking at someone and saying that, I like we do this with relationships, is we date the what do you say? Um, I cannot even remember, but we date the person that we want them to be, not who they actually are. We can't see who they actually are. It's their potential. We date their potential, and we do this in family relationships and friends. Is we see people's potential, and that's who we're talking to. That's who we're trying to have a relationship with. But that's not always the case. And that's why you see, you know, Joseph, he he didn't receive self validation. He no longer needed them to agree with his story, that he no longer needed them to agree with his story for it to be true. Joseph endings is not about validation. It is about authority without resentment. And I'm hoping that you are able, me too, can stop trying to drag people down our path. They have their own path. Everyone doesn't want to walk with you, and that's okay because you love them where they are. Now, maybe you have to put boundaries for them because especially if your goal is to become a millionaire and you have a brother with financial debt that's not trying to do anything about it, and yes, of course, you're a millionaire and you could clear his debt in seconds and then he'll just go and do it all over again. You know, he's not learning anything. You're not helping him. And sometimes you have to let people like that stay where they are and you have to love them where they are. You have to love them inside of that cave because they want to stay there. And that's okay. And it can be hard to do that as well. So, brings me to my last point is called grieving. We already knew what grieving was, but you may have to grieve family, even though they're not necessarily dead, but it feels like it because you have to continue walking. You can't stay with them and you cannot bring them with you because they don't want to go. Friends don't always want to go with you. And you have to grieve them. You have to grieve self-validation because maybe you built your identity in your decisions and you look for them to tell you who you are. But know who you are through your own actions. So I hope that this helps someone out there. This truly has helped me. Don't come for me because I'm not claiming to be a Bible scholar. And I don't care what you think of how I see the story. I'm sure I've seen it wrong. But does it help you? That's all that matters. Thank you for joining Bree. Y'all have a good day. See you next week.